Hey YouTube, what's up? So as you may or may not know, we've had a pretty crazy month and we want to fill you guys in on what's been going on in our lives.
First of all, we just got back from a 2-week-long trip to the Pacific Northwest, and we've both been working non-stop since we got back. Also, we need to call attention to the fact that I have a mustache, which is gonna go away really soon. You wanted to memorialize it in a video, so this is it. My mustache is being memorialized. I also want to call attention to the fact that we're both in our underwear, because it's hot. It's like summery, and
It's actually not that hot. We just wanted to not put pants on.
let's get to this story. For those of you who watched John's whiteboard video, he kind of went into a little bit of detail about what was going on. We want to dive in and tell you the full story.
So about a month ago, I was getting ready for bed, and then all of a sudden I started to feel really chilly. So I got into bed, started cuddling with this guy, and I could not fall asleep for the entirety of the night. I woke up the next morning, I had 103-degree fever.
You were so hot. Like, I still can remember touching you, and it was like I was touching like a pot that was on the stove.
It was like sizzle.
Yeah, I could put my hands nearby you and feel like the waves radiating off.
Holy sh**.
So this all happened on a Monday, and the next 2 days we thought like maybe this will go away. But by Wednesday you were not feeling better.
I was miserable. I was so achy. I had a headache, I had jaw pain, and my throat started to feel really sore. So I was like, oh sh**, I think I have strep throat.
So we went to a walk-in clinic, and sure enough, he was diagnosed with strep throat. They gave him antibiotics and sent us on our way. About 2 days later, on Friday,
It felt like my throat was closing up. Like I couldn't swallow, I couldn't breathe.
I was getting the straw ready to like poke through here so he could breathe like through his like area.
Also, my voice had changed, and not like in a puberty way. They call it hot potato voice, but the way I described it was I sounded like Kermit speaking underwater. I'm really weird. I sound like this, but not exactly. It was like more like guttural and like phlegmy.
That's actually pretty good, like.
That's what I sounded like, right?
Yeah. By Saturday, we were like, all right, this is not right. We gotta go back to the doctor. So we went to another walk-in clinic. The doctor was like very quick. He like looked in. He's like, oh yeah, like this is no good. We're like, okay. So he's like, well, you might have an abscess. And I'm like, we don't even know what that is at this point. He's like, you know what? You should go to the emergency room. Like very like kind of casually. He's like, yeah, just go. So of course you started freaking out.
Even you saying that right now makes me anxious. Feel my
Oh
sweaty
my God,
palms.
yeah, they're palms.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're palms. We walked to the emergency room. The first thing they do is give him a steroid shot to decrease the inflammation. And then they summoned an ENT to come and look at him.
The ENT told me I had a peritonsillar abscess in the back of my throat. For those who aren't queasy, basically what it is a pocket of pus that forms from an infection in the tonsil. Typically the way that they handle these kinds of situations is they'll lance it or slice it or open it up, make an incision, and have all the pus drain out. Once this procedure is done, the patient feels better in like, 1 to 2 days. Basically like back to work, normal after that. So the ENT comes in, he's like, I'm gonna do this procedure, it's gonna be real quick, I'm gonna give you some local anesthetic so you won't feel the pain.
And they put this little like vacuum thing in, and like as he's doing the procedure, blood and pus going like through this tube into this thing, and I'm like, oh, I can't watch this.
It was pretty gross.
So I turned away.
Ironically, though I'm terrified of like the concept of going to the doctor, actual physical procedures, I don't really have that much of a problem with. Like I don't really mind pain, and I don't mind when they're doing procedure if I know that's gonna fix the problem that I have.
They said to come back on Tuesday for a follow-up to see if everything went according to plan. He comes back on Tuesday and they're less than impressed with how he's doing. At this point they're like, you should be better, but like keep taking the antibiotic, here's more steroids.
They also said that there was a possibility that though they had drained a pus pocket in the back of my throat, that another one could have formed or could have been there the whole time that didn't get drained. That's why my tonsil hadn't gone down from all the swelling.
Then on Friday, we were leaving for a big trip. We were taking a train up to Boston to see John's family, and then we were gonna fly to Seattle. And we had a follow-up visit Friday morning right before our train. So we're seen by the physician's assistant, and she kind of looks in his mouth and is like, okay. She leaves the room and comes back with like a squad of doctors. I don't know what she said to them. She was probably like, yo, you guys gotta see this. Like, what is going on in this guy's throat? So one of them gave him the like anesthetic. One of them was holding like the spit tray, another one had the vacuum, and the doctor was going in like with the procedure, and I'm just sitting there like watching all this go down in a really, really tiny room. Like it was smaller than our bedroom. All these people were crammed in there, and John just like, ah.
But the doctor did tell me the incision had closed up in the back of my throat, and that's why it had stopped draining, and that's why there was still all this inflammation. But what he was going to do was open up really wide so that it wouldn't close up again, get all of the pus out, And then again, I should be feeling better in the next 2 days.
So as he's opening up the incision, I'm like peeking in, and the pus just like erupts like a volcano out of this hole. And I'm like, oh, this is disgusting. I should have live streamed it.
I know, you should have.
So we left doctor number 5 feeling kind of hopeful, like, okay, maybe this will be it. We arrive in Boston, and then the next day, we're like, you know what, we should make sure everything went well, and we see a 6th doctor.
The 6th doctor was kind of an unofficial visit. It was my cousin's friend, who is also an ENT. She graciously gave up her time on a Saturday to bring me to her office to just like kind of check me out and make sure that everything was okay.
She was very straight to the point.
She scared the out of me.
At this point, John was feeling a lot better, and she was like, you are really, really sick. Also be careful of this, also this. Oh, you're flying? Like, I wouldn't do that. And we're like, we have our flight in 2 days. Like, what are we gonna do?
She told me that because I was on steroids, I had this false sense of health. So basically, I was feeling better than I really was. She did say that I was on a solid trajectory. She also felt in the back of my throat and said that she couldn't feel any more pus pockets. 7 to 10 days, you should be back to normal health.
So the days go by, we fly to Seattle, John's feeling like pretty good. We do an awesome hike with Matthew and Michael, which you can watch in our Seattle vlog. Self-promotion. And when we get back from the hike, John's feeling a little bit less good than he did before.
At this point, I wasn't sure how I was feeling because, as I mentioned, I have a lot of anxiety when it comes to medical stuff. And so I didn't know if I was working myself up and thinking that I was sick when in reality I was fine. But my throat started to feel a little bit sore and it felt like it was closing up.
So we're staying with our friends at this point in Issaquah, which is just outside of Seattle. And this first night, he's doing worse and worse and worse, and he's getting really anxious and feeling really bad. We go to bed, and around midnight, he kind of jolts awake and is like, something's wrong.
At this point, I really started to feel like I couldn't breathe. My throat was so swollen and it felt like it was closing up, so I was getting really scared. Thankfully, there was a hospital literally across the street from where we were staying.
It's pretty crazy how lucky that was, actually.
Let's be safe rather than sorry. I don't want to wait until the morning. Plus, it might be less busy now if we go in the middle of the night.
So we go and see our 7th doctor in the emergency room in Seattle. Sure enough, at 1 a.m., there was nobody waiting to be seen, so we got seen right away.
And the first thing they asked me is, do you have a living will?
Well, she looks in your mouth and is like, do you have a will?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my god. Like, worst timing ever.
I'm also like hooked up blood pressure and what's the other thing? Pulse?
Yeah, your
Is that
pulse.
the thing they take? That skyrockets and they're like,
oh,
that's a little bit high.
Yeah. Meanwhile, they really want to figure out what is going wrong. So they take a blood sample, they give him some fluids so he feels a little bit better. They give him more steroids to try to calm the inflammation down. They also order a CAT scan so they can see exactly where this pus pocket is and what's going on.
The idea of getting a CAT scan scared me because of all the radiation that goes through that process, plus being hooked up to all these IVs, and just being in a hospital at midnight in Seattle. I was just not doing well. I was literally shaking for most of that time, wasn't I?
Yeah.
But you were such a trooper, and I know I made a video thanking you for all of the things that you do, but I was so thankful to have you there. And I was kind of running on adrenaline, so I wasn't like tired. Basically dragged you out of bed at midnight, and you were sitting there dutifully all through the night, just making sure that I got through it without being too anxious.
Making out your will.
I was gonna be delirious. You're like, here, sign this. Beep 2 gets all of Beep 1's possessions. $10.
$10, please. So he comes back from the CAT scan and they have isolated the pus pocket. They found out where it is. They have decided that it is time for a 3rd procedure. So the doctor goes in, he gives him local anesthetic again, and he goes in with the syringe to try to extract the pus, and he starts poking around in John's mouth to try to find it. He keeps coming up dry. He's like, I don't know where it is. It should be here based on the CAT scan. I don't know what's going on. And at this point, I can see in his mouth there are like 5 different holes that he's tried to extract stuff from. And he's like, you know what? I got a little bit out. I think that there's more, but it doesn't help to just keep poking around in your mouth because we're just going to cause more damage than harm at this point. They give him more antibiotics. They send him home, and we kind of hope for the best. Also, at this point, like, he had just come off his steroids, and one of the side effects is like really bad acne when you come off steroids. So he's sitting in this hospital bed, and the doctor's like, is this normal, by the way? And I was like, no, I don't normally look like this. Like, his whole face is like red and like covered in rashes.
I did learn how to do makeup on this trip, though.
Now we have more than just a makeup. Or no, we don't yet, right?
No, we don't.
We still need to buy the makeup. But you learned how to do it because our friend taught us how to do makeup. She literally gave you a tutorial. Oh, she is great. Big thank you, by the way, to Steph and Matt for helping us through this whole ordeal. So we get back. John's mom comes the next day. Stay with us and take him to the next doctor's appointment, because at this point, I've been in doctor's offices like more times than I can count over the last 2 weeks.
Also, my mom's a nurse. She would be able to understand what the doctors were saying and interpret it for me too.
Monday comes around. He has a follow-up with the ENT.
We see one of the nurse practitioners, and she remembers me, and she's like, oh, how are you doing? Like, I know you had it so rough 2 weeks ago. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a lot better, but all these things happened in the last 2 weeks. And she's like,
yeah.
Oh. But the fact that the pus hasn't fully drained and it's been almost a month, she decided to talk to the main ENT again. So she leaves the room and she comes back about 10 minutes later and she's like, so you have to get your tonsil out.
Which is like a huge deal. It's a huge procedure.
You're just going to take the right one out for now and hope that the paratonsillar abscess never returns on the left side. But by taking out the right one, it will never recur again. So at least this side of my throat will be fine going forward.
So the big news is that this is happening right now.
Like while you're watching this video, I'm probably in the middle of surgery.
On May 31st, this is Wednesday, John is going into surgery. He's going to be put under general anesthesia and they're going to do some pretty major surgery in your mouth. His mom is coming back. I'll be there. You know, we're going to make sure everything is going smoothly. So your thoughts and prayers, if you're religious or whatever, are appreciated. It's going to be a long recovery process and we hope you will bear with us as we deal with this.
But I'm doing my best to keep my spirits up. It's been a long, arduous journey, but there have been some great times in between. We had a great trip in the Pacific Northwest. We also got to go back to Boston and see a bunch of my family and friends.
And you're dating Gay Mario now, so...
You can't get better than that. You should just keep that. You need to put that hat on.
Why? This isn't Mario.
No, backwards. Epitome of a boy.
Beebs.
So thank you all for listening to that long story. We hope you weren't too bored, and we really appreciate all your support. We've gotten so many comments on Twitter and Instagram and Patreon and everything, and you guys have been the best. So you guys are really helping us get through this.
Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. I'm Beep.
I'm Beep.
We are two Beeps.
Peacing out.
Beeps out. Tonsil out. Mustache out.
No, mustache on.
You mean in?